Yo, listen, Joe McCann's first wife just walked out the shadows and she allegedly torched his entire story. The same man telling the world his fiancée Ashlee Jenae took her own life in a Zanzibar villa? Turns out the woman who knew him before the cameras, before the crypto money, before the Instagram fairy tale, she's been whispering things that flip this whole narrative upside down. And Joe really thought a 5-star resort in Africa was the smartest place to do whatever he did? Bro picked the worst possible setup to play this game. Before we get into it, subscribe, don't miss it. Ashlee Robinson, the woman you'll know as Ashlee Jenae, was found unresponsive inside a villa at the Zanzibar luxury resort on April 9, 2026, and pronounced dead on April 10th, source of fiancé, Joe McCann, CEO of crypto hedge fund Asymmetric, is being questioned by Tanzanian police, with his passport withheld pending autopsy results. Source: and Joe really thought he could float through this with a press release in silence? Bro clearly didn't think this through. Now, before we dig in, let me set the table for y'all because the details matter. Ashlee was 31 years old, a Miami-based lifestyle and travel influencer. Born April 5, 1995, built her entire brand around the soft life, hotel pools, sunsets, designer luggage, that aspirational black girl luxury aesthetic that millions of women followed and copied. She had just turned 31 4 days before she was found dead. 4 days. Let that number sit in your chest for a second. And Joe is reportedly 45 years old. Full legal name Joseph Isaac McCann, CEO of Asymmetric Financial, a name crypto Twitter knew very well long before this tragedy made headlines. This wasn't some random vacation either. This was built to look like a fairy tale. Birthday celebration, engagement, safari, luxury villa, the exact content blueprint every soft life influencer is told to chase. And it ended with a body, a withheld passport, and a family on a different continent crowdfunding to bring their daughter home. Now let's look at the receipts that show why the story isn't holding water, because every single line of the official narrative is collapsing in slow motion, and the receipts are stacking up faster than Joe's PR team can spin them. Let's start with a word straight from the people who actually know Ashlee. In an interview with NBC New York on April 14, 2026, her father Harry Robinson said it plain. "My daughter Ashlee, she's no longer here with us and we are trying to find out why. Please help me, please." When I heard that man's voice crack, man, I had to pause the video. That ain't a father reading a script. That's a father who knows something ain't adding up. That a father who got the phone call no parent should ever get, on a different continent, from a man he barely knew, with a story that didn't match the daughter he raised. Then comes the moment that flipped the whole internet. On April 13th, 2026, Cardi B took to X and dropped 4 words that echoed across every timeline. That girl did not off herself. Source: bro, when Cardi says it on her main account, that's not a rumor anymore. That's a $1 billion megaphone calling cap. I read this and was like, nah, Cardi don't speak unless she sees something. She didn't tag Joe. She didn't have to. The whole internet decoded that tweet in under an hour. And when you think about Cardi's reach, 30+ million on X alone, that single post forced every entertainment outlet, from Complex to Hot 97, to pivot that coverage from tragic accident to unanswered questions overnight. That's a kind of cultural pressure no PR firm on earth can buy back. Now here's where it gets heavier. Ashlee's friend, PR executive Savannah Britt, posted on X around April 11th. "We need justice for my friend Ashlee Jenae, who was found dead in a hotel in Tanzania, and her fiancé Joe McCann claims she hung herself." Source: when I read that claims, one word, I knew her circle wasn't buying it either. That tweet single-handedly pushed this story global. Savannah didn't just post once and disappear either. She kept that hashtag alive, posting "Justice for Ashlee Jenae" speaking head in silhouette days later, and refusing to let the algorithm bury it. And Joe still ain't released a real statement. Bro said what? That silence is the dumbest flex I've ever heard. When your fiancé's best friend is publicly using the word claims about your version of events, and you respond with nothing, the internet writes a verdict for you. Police gave their version too. North Unguja Regional Police Commander Benedict Mapajira told reporters at an April 14 press conference that the couple had a falling out at the resort, that staff separated them into different rooms, and that Ashlee allegedly hung herself in a wardrobe using cloth from her dress. Source: nah, you can't say cloth from her dress. and expect grieving families and a global audience to just nod along. That line right there, that's where the official story lost the plot for most people watching. And Mike Pajura didn't just casually mention this. He held a full press conference, on camera, doubling down on a narrative that already had visible holes. When local Tanzanian outlets started pushing the same script the same week, that's when international observers started asking, who's coordinating this messaging, and why is it locked in before the autopsy even closed? And then there's Ashlee's mother, Yolanda Endres, who told NBC and CBS something that should chill anybody listening. Joe initially told her, Ashlee was okay and she was stable and she was okay and don't worry about it. But she was already at the hospital. Then she said the words that haunt this whole case. Yes, 11 hours later. So when I heard a mother say that gap out loud, I had to rewind 3 times. 11 hours. Bro really called and said don't worry while she was already gone. That ain't grief. That's something else entirely. 11 hours is enough time to fly from New York to Dubai. 11 hours is enough time to give a full police statement, retain a lawyer, coordinate a public narrative, and rehearse the version of events you want the family to hear. And what did Yolanda get? She's stable. Don't worry. A lie, told over an international phone line, while paramedics, police, and resort management already knew what had happened. That's a receipt that's gonna haunt every interview Joe ever does for the rest of his life. Last one, Joe himself. According to TMZ, Joe told Tanzanian authorities he found Ashlee hanged herself on the door on April 9th. Source wait. The door? Police said wardrobe. Joe said door. When I read this, I had to do a double take. Is he serious? 2 different stories from 2 sides of the same room. And it gets worse. A separate report from Tanzanian outlets surfaced details from a hotel attendant claiming Ashlee was actually found in a closet after asking the attendant for a phone charger and saying to come back in 15 minutes. So now we got 3 locations, door, wardrobe, closet, for ONE incident. That's not 3 witnesses describing the same thing differently. That's 3 different scripts that haven't been edited yet. And as if that weren't enough, TMZ later reported that internal medical documents from the local facility list her immediate cause of death as cerebral hypoxia by strangulation and suffocation, which, forensically, is a category of finding that does not comfortably align with the scenario police initially described. Now let's connect the dots. Now that we got the quotes, let's connect the dots, because the calendar tells a story nobody's broadcasting loud enough. April 3rd, Joe proposes. The proposal video, captured on a sunset safari near Serval Wildlife, went viral within hours, with Ashlee in tears, ring on finger, the whole influencer dream sequence. April 5th, Ashlee turns 31. April 6th, they relocate from one Zanzibar resort to a second, quieter, more secluded one, Zanzibar, on the northern tip of the island near Nungwi. April 8th, a fight so loud, the guests in Villa 24 right next door complained about the noise. Source that argument happened in a place specifically chosen for privacy 2 days after they moved there. So Joe really picked a brand new villa, isolated by design, right before everything went sideways? That's terrible strategy. Brew. And the resort guests didn't just hear noise. They reportedly heard shouting, multiple voices, banging, and called the front desk to complain. Resort staff had to physically intervene and separate the couple into different rooms. That's not normal couple energy. That's red flag territory documented by neutral resort employees who have nothing to gain or lose from telling the truth. Think about that. Hotel staff at a 5-star resort in Zanzibar got involved. That doesn't happen for we couldn't agree on dinner. That happens when something is escalating to a level the staff feel professionally and legally obligated to document. And that incident report? It exists. Somewhere. On paper. And Joe's lawyers know that. Now the business timeline. Remember the CEO title? It carried weight. But by July 2025, months before this trip, Joe had already shut down Asymmetric's liquid fund after reported 78% loss. Source that tweet? Public. Shutting down was triggered, in part, by a viral social media post that exposed an alleged $10 million loss tied to over-leveraged crypto strategies, the kind of post-crypto Twitter passes around for sport. So when he was flexing $1,000 a night villas in Zanzibar, the fund backing his image was already a smoking crater. Fortune literally framed him as a crypto trader held in Tanzania, not as a billionaire founder. Source: any smart person would have gone low-key during a financial freefall. But Joe doubled down on appearances. It gets even more brutal. After the liquid fund collapsed, Joe pivoted hard, trying to launch a $1 billion Solana-focused digital asset treasury via a SPAC deal reportedly worth $1.5 billion. That deal? Cancelled. Sources told Blockworks that the SPAC deal was called off entirely, raising serious questions about institutional confidence in Joe's judgment. So picture the timeline from his side. 78% fund loss in July 2025, $1 billion SPAC dies, public reputation in freefall, and then, boom, viral engagement video in Africa with one of Black Twitter's favorite influencers. The image rehab tool was obvious to anyone watching crypto and culture at the same time. And bro really thought nobody would connect those two timelines? That's the kind of arrogance that only comes from someone who's used to losing other people's money without consequences. That GoFundMe? Launched April 13th by Harry Robinson. $50,000 goal. Source: the campaign was set up specifically to cover travel costs, repatriation of remains, and burial expenses. Costs that, frankly, a billionaire fiancé should have absorbed on his American Express black card before the family even had to ask. That fundraiser went up because a fiancé who was perceived as a millionaire allegedly didn't step up to bring her body home. Think about the optics. Millionaire CEO, $1,000 a night villa, crowdfunding to repatriate her remains. So Joe really thought nobody would notice the math doesn't add up? TMZ flagged the same disconnect, putting the GoFundMe directly next to McCann's CEO branding in their coverage. And once that side-by-side hit timelines, the public verdict shifted within 24 hours. His marriage history? That's a layer reshaping everything. Social posts dating from 2021 to 2024 show him actively talking about a wife and 2 young kids, and there's no clean public divorce record people have surfaced. Source: those tweets? Going viral now because eagle-eyed users found old replies where men literally told him their kid looked like his. Source: online sleuths even named the alleged ex-wife, Shay Jackson, and started digging into whether there's a still active custody battle, which would mean Joe was either A, finalized and divorced nobody photographed, or B, proposing to Ashlee while still legally entangled with someone else. Either version is a problem. One is messy. The other is something a hedge fund CEO can't legally afford to be caught doing on camera. So the proposal happened before the public ever saw a clear divorce confirmation. That's a move of someone who doesn't have real advisors, or doesn't care. The 11-hour silence lines up with the exact window Tanzanian police would have been arriving, taking statements, and reviewing the scene. That call to her mother came after all that. Joe really thought the family wouldn't timestamp every move? Bro is operating like cameras don't exist in 2026. And don't forget, the U.S. Embassy reportedly sent a coroner to Zanzibar specifically because the family wanted independent eyes on whatever the local autopsy claimed. When the embassy gets involved, that's not small case. This is now an international incident with diplomatic implications. Joe is no longer just a guy with a story problem. He's a guy with a State Department footprint. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Let me zoom into the small stuff nobody's talking loud enough about. Now check this out. That single phrase, on the door. Joe's words. Police's version uses wardrobe. Local hotel staff later described a closet. 3 different surfaces, 3 different geometries, 3 different forensic implications. Those aren't synonyms. A door is exterior, accessible, visible. A wardrobe is interior, concealed, off-camera. A closet, depending on the villa layout, is a deeper interior space, often without natural light, often completely sound-isolated. The difference between those 2 words is a difference between something happening in plain view versus something happening in the most hidden corner of a private villa. And Joe really chose a version that makes the least forensic sense? That's embarrassing for someone who runs hedge funds. Bro can model crypto risk, but can't keep a story straight. Now the cloth from her dress line. Think about what's being claimed forensically, that a 31-year-old woman, in distress, in a luxury villa with belts, sashes, robe ties, and electrical cords all readily available, chose to manually rip fabric off her own dress. The Herald's own timeline notes investigators are looking at an unidentified mark on her body. Source: that mark? Not addressed in the official ruling. Even more telling, a separately surfaced medical document referenced cerebral hypoxia by strangulation and suffocation as the immediate cause of death, language that, in clinical practice, is used to describe a much broader category of asphyxial events than the simple narrative police are pushing. And to make matters even more confusing, another report referenced chronic meningitis as a listed cause of death on a separate piece of paperwork, which makes zero medical sense in the context of a sudden hospital arrival from a luxury villa. So now we got TWO different cause of death papers floating in the public record. If Joe's defenders had half a brain, they'd notice that one detail alone makes the cloth narrative fragile. Forensic stories shouldn't have plot holes. This one has a canyon. The phone charger request? That's a forensic ghost in this whole case. She asked the attendant to come back in 15 minutes. Source why a 15-minute window? Why not right now? That specific number, 15, suggests she was waiting for something or someone. A call, a message, a meeting. Was that phone ever recovered? Was it imaged forensically? Has anyone confirmed her last outgoing texts? That charger ain't a small detail. That's a digital lifeline, and we still don't know what was on the other end of it. Hotel staff confirmed they did return with a charger, and that's part of how the discovery sequence even started. Think about the implications. She was alive enough to talk to staff, request an item, and set a time window. That's somebody actively planning their next 15 minutes. Does that profile match the official spontaneous, dispute-driven narrative? Or does it match someone who was waiting on a specific event, a phone call, a confrontation, a person walking back into the room that the public has not yet been told about? And Joe really thought that line about her hanging from a tree wouldn't get caught? Because that's another inconsistency floating in the reporting. Some accounts said tree, others said wardrobe. Source 2 locations. One body. That's not police miscommunication. That's a story being rewritten in real time. The villa pattern. Bungalow 25, with Bungalow 24 right next door close enough to hear and complain. So whatever happened that night had audio witnesses. Hotel staff, neighbors, walkway cameras at the access points. If Joe McCann had read the room, he would have understood that a 5-star resort isn't a black box. It's a paper trail with a beach view. That's a problem with him. He doesn't read the layout before he moves. And let's be specific about Zanzibar. This is a property marketed to international honeymooners, with 24/7 security, multilingual front desk staff, GDPR-grade data retention, and incident report protocols designed specifically to protect the resort from international litigation. Every door access, every staff entry, every minibar restock, logged. So when Joe's lawyers eventually go to discovery, they are not walking into a sleepy beach hotel. They are walking into a forensic dataset. Now let's see how the media covered this, because the framing across outlets is wildly different, and that itself is telling. Outlet 1. People magazine framed it carefully, leading with a procedural angle. Fiancé being questioned, passport withheld, no charges. Source clean, neutral, PR safe. They mention Ashlee without leaning into the family's doubt. That's the corporate press lane. People also notably hedged on the cause of death, sticking strictly to police at attributions, which is journalistic code for we don't believe this either, but we can't say so on the record. Outlet 2. TMZ went full advocacy, leading with the family frustration, the GoFundMe, the silence from Joe. Source that post-by-post coverage flipped public opinion in 48 hours. Where people said questioned, TMZ said keeping silent. Same facts, 2 different verdicts. TMZ also broke the most damaging detail of the entire case so far, the leaked medical document referencing cerebral hypoxia by strangulation and suffocation, which they published before any major mainstream outlet would touch it. That move alone changed the trajectory of the public narrative. Outlet 3. BBC played it British, sober, balanced, leaning on Tanzanian police statements. Source, but even the BBC kept the word speaking to police in the headline instead of cleared. That word choice tells you the international press isn't ready to close this. The BBC also notably avoided repeating police's self-inflicted framing in their own voice. They attributed every claim to local authorities, never adopting it editorially. When the BBC refuses to launder a police narrative, that's a quiet but loud signal. Then you got fortune, and this is where it shifts hard. Fortune framed Joe not as a grieving fiancé, but as a crypto fund manager held in Tanzania, which is a completely different brand of story. Source that framing tells you the financial press already smells something the entertainment press is being polite about. CoinDesk doubled down on it, opening their coverage with a line. Authorities cite suicide ruling but continue probe as family raises doubts, a sentence that, in financial journalism, is the equivalent of yelling fire in a quiet theater. When CoinDesk and Fortune tag team a fund manager in their headline space, his career is already in cardiac arrest, regardless of what the autopsy ultimately says. Then there's CBS, NBC, and 6ABC, the broadcast here, who all lean hard into the parents' interview. Yolanda's voice, Harry's plea, the 11-hour delay, the contradictions. None of them framed Joe favorably. None of them adopted the police language at face value. That's a network television lane saying, between the lines, we don't believe this either. Newsweek went even further, calling out the irony of a dream vacation ending in international detention. Now the counter-narrative. Some Joe defenders are saying is just following lawyer advice and that public silence during an international investigation is normal. Some Joe McCann supporters are reaching trying to defend the optics. But here's why that doesn't hold up. Lawyer advice means stay off social media. It doesn't mean stop calling your dead fiancé's grieving mother. There's no attorney in America who tells a client to ghost a victim's family for days. That's not legal strategy. That's avoidance. The receipts don't lie. And let's be real. If Joe were innocent in grieving, his team would have leaked at minimum a devastated, cooperating fully statement to a friendly outlet within 48 hours. The fact that no one in his orbit has done that, no anonymous source close to McCann, no soft launch statement, no Instagram tribute, tells you everything about what his lawyers are actually advising behind closed doors. But here's what nobody is saying out loud, and this is the angle the mainstream press won't touch with a 10-foot pole. The mainstream story goes like this. Tragic vacation, dispute, devastating outcome, investigation pending. Clean and sad. Move on. But here's the real story, the one that lives between the lines. This case is a textbook example of how the financial influencer industrial complex weaponizes black women as image rehabilitation assets. And once you see this angle, you can't unsee it. Think about what was happening in Joe McCann's world before Ashlee. His liquid fund had created 78%. Investor confidence, gone. Crypto Twitter was eating him alive in 2025. The man needed a narrative reset. His billion-dollar SPAC deal had collapsed. His Solana DAT play got cancelled in front of the entire industry. Every pivot he tried in 2025 ended with another humiliating headline. Then suddenly, proposal video, Zanzibar, fairy tale captions, a beautiful, beloved black female influencer with a vibrant audience embracing him publicly. Bro went from fund manager who lost everyone's money to in love and engage in Africa in the time it takes to post a reel. Joe is a puppet of his own image management strategy, and the industry let him use a real human being as a rebrand campaign. Source. Now here's a historical pattern people are scared to name. We've seen this script before. Successful, visible black woman dies abroad. Local authorities rush to call it self-inflicted. No autopsy release for weeks. No surveillance available. Family force a crowdfund to bring her body home while the partner has wealth optics. We saw versions of this with Shanquella Robinson in Mexico. The Robinson family was told it was alcohol intoxication. The actual footage said something completely different. Years later, justice is still a moving target. We're seeing echoes with this case. The same jurisdictional fog. The same official cause that contradicts witness reports. The same initial silence from the partner. The same crowdfunding moment by the family. The system relies on jurisdictional confusion to bury inconvenient questions. Joe McCann is repeating the same image protection playbook that has buried other women's stories and is on the losing side of history because the internet doesn't forget anymore. The cultural impact angle is even darker. This is happening at the exact moment black female influencers are being told to marry up, to date crypto money, to chase the soft life with men who present six-figure lifestyles. Ashlee was sold a dream the entire culture markets to women like her, and somewhere along the way, that dream became the most dangerous con in modern dating. And Joe McCann represents the old god of soft life suitors that the culture is finally done pretending to celebrate. Essence framed Ashlee specifically as creator of aspirational soft life content, meaning she wasn't just a person. She was a category leader, the face that other young black women were watching for permission to dream bigger. When that face is gone, in those circumstances, the entire content category gets a wound it doesn't recover from quickly. The psychological warfare angle? Look at the timing. The proposal, public, viral, Instagram engineered. The relocation to a more secluded resort 48 hours later, private, off-grid, away from the original photo zone. That's not romance choreography. That's setting design. Bro really thought he was playing chess. He was playing checkers with a chessboard, and the family caught the move. Every smart move from Ashlee's father since. The GoFundMe, the press, the calls for footage, has put Joe in checkmate without him even realizing the game was on. And let's add another layer to the choreography critique. Why move resorts ATO on April 6, 3 days after a viral proposal, when every brand deal in the influencer economy benefits from staying at the same documented location? You don't move venues mid-trip when the first venue is already trending. Unless the move itself was the point. Unless privacy was suddenly more valuable than visibility. Unless somebody in that couple wanted to be off camera for what came next. That decision alone deserves its own forensic timeline. Then there's the authenticity angle. Joe's whole persona is manufactured. The self-made CEO who allegedly was actually still legally tied to a previous marriage according to the TikTok investigators digging through public records. Source: the wealth, backed by an 78% loss fund. The proposal, captured on camera that conveniently went viral days before tragedy. The grief, 11 hours of silence. None of it is consistent with how a person actually behaves when the love of their life is dying. Joe is rewriting himself in real time because his real story isn't impressive. It's a fun collapse, an unclear marriage history, and a missing apology. And the receipts on that fun collapse aren't whispered rumors. They are documented in CoinDesk, CryptoBriefing, Blockworks, and every major crypto outlet on planet Earth. You can't run from a paper trail with a Bloomberg terminal on it. Now the deepest layer, the insurance theory people whisper but won't post. Without speculating on what Joe did or didn't do, here's a cultural reality. When a man's finances collapse, his next move is often to find a partner whose social capital can be leveraged. Ashlee's brand, her followers, her aesthetic, her black female luxury audience, was more valuable as a public asset than Joe's fund. Allegedly, some people online have floated that her name was on the hotel reservation, suggesting she may have funded major parts of the trip. Source: if that's true, and I'm saying IF, then the entire millionaire fiancé narrative was inverted. He needed her brand more than she needed his money. And when that dynamic is reversed in private, the public proposal becomes a different kind of contract entirely. And that's the truth they won't tell you on broadcast TV. Because to tell that truth, you'd have to admit that an entire ecosystem, finance bros, crypto founders, image consultants, brand managers, has been quietly using black women's audiences as soft power laundering for years. You would have to ask uncomfortable questions about who proposes to whom, on whose camera, on whose timeline, with whose ring, in whose Zanzibar villa. And nobody wants to be the first cable network to ask that question on Monday morning. So what happens next? Scenario 1, the most likely outcome. Here's what's most likely to happen in the next 30 to 60 days. The Tanzanian autopsy and toxicology results are going to drop, and they're going to be incomplete or contested. We've already seen TWO different cause of death papers leak. Cerebral hypoxia by strangulation and suffocation on one document. Chronic meningitis on another, and that paperwork chaos isn't gonna magically resolve itself when the official version drops. When that report lands, Ashlee's family is going to commission their own independent autopsy on U.S. soil, and we already know the U.S. Embassy sent a coroner specifically because the family pushed for independent verification, so the second opinion infrastructure is already in motion. That's a move every family has made in cases like this. When that independent report comes back with even any inconsistency from the Tanzanian version, the entire suicide ruling collapses publicly, and Joe McCann is going to look desperate trying to manage the news cycle from the sidelines. The silence is going to hurt him more than any statement could. Mark my words, when his PR team finally panics and forces a statement, it's going to land flat, because the internet has already written the verdict. Scenario 2, the alternative path. If the autopsy somehow supports the official ruling, that doesn't end this. It escalates it. The family's already on record signaling they don't trust the narrative. Source: when that happens, expect a civil suit. Wrongful death cases have a lower burden of proof than criminal, and the discovery process forces a production of everything: surveillance, financials, text messages, deleted DMs, insurance policies if any exist. If Joe McCann thinks he survived the police phase, he is not ready for what civil discovery does to a private life. We saw what attorneys did to wealthy defendants in cases past. Joe doesn't stand a chance in a civil courtroom where his entire fund history, relationship history, and financial truth become exhibits. Imagine the deposition where opposing counsel calmly asks him to explain, under oath, every line item of the asymmetric liquid fund's 78% loss, while a jury watches him sweat. Imagine the moment his alleged ex-wife's name appears on a subpoena. Imagine the sub-second pause before he answers a question about who paid for what at Zanzibar. Civil discovery doesn't care about press releases. It cares about documents. Scenario 3, the industry and cultural earthquake. Looking at the bigger picture, this case is going to do something to the influencer CEO dating ecosystem that no PSA ever could. Black women are going to start demanding due diligence, public divorce records, real financial transparency, no more trusted vibe engagements at private resorts. Crypto Twitter is going to start treating fund managers like Joe with the same skepticism they treat FTX alumni. 5 years from now, people will look back at this moment as a case that ended the soft life with a crypto bro fantasy. Joe McCann's relevance in finance? Functionally over. No serious LP is wiring capital to a manager whose name autocompletes with Tanzania in Google. He's watching the culture move on without him, and there's nothing he can do about it. The deeper consequence? Tanzania's tourism industry is going to face international scrutiny on how it handles foreign deaths, and resorts like the one in question are going to be forced to release surveillance protocols or face boycotts from the same black travel community that fill their bookings. The internet is going to remember this name attached to the resort, and that's a permanent stain. Travel bloggers are already pulling Zanzibar from must-visit lists. Black travel groups on Facebook with hundreds of thousands of members are openly debating boycotting Tanzania entirely until transparency standards change. That's not a temporary PR storm. That's a structural revenue impact on an entire region's tourism economy. Joe's lawyers can negotiate. His PR can spin, but the algorithm doesn't forgive. And let's be honest about one more thing. Joe McCann is now a case study. Business school case study. Crypto industry cautionary tale. Influencer marketing thesis paper. His name is gonna show up in academic research on how not to manage a public-facing brand collapse, in journalism textbooks on how international investigations get reframed by social media in real time, and in cultural studies essays on how black women's lives are processed by global media when something goes wrong abroad. That's not a comeback any PR firm can engineer. That's a permanent footprint in the historical record. Whatever happens, one thing's clear: Joe already lost. The court of public opinion delivered its verdict the moment Cardi B typed those 4 words. Everything from here is just paperwork. The autopsy is paperwork. The civil suit will be paperwork. The Wikipedia revisions, the Google autocompletes, the LinkedIn purges, the LP withdrawal letters, all paperwork. The verdict was already written by the family that loved her, the friend that named her, the audience that watched her, and the culture that recognized instantly what kind of story this really was. Ashlee Jenae's name will be remembered. Joe McCann's name will be remembered too, but not for any of the reasons he spent the last decade trying to engineer. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed uncovering the real story, smash that like button and hit subscribe so you never miss when we expose what everyone else is too scared to say.